Well, hello on this wonderful day. This is Voices in My Head, episode 18. And today, Basil has the guest, Mike Dennis. Mike Dennis, is that two guests? No, it's Mike Dennis. That's his name. How does he have two first names? Well, because some people have two first names. Oh, wait, that's the doorbell. Neely, go get the door. Okay, I got it. Hello, can I help you? Yes, I am. Oh, where are? Oh, you're very small. My name is Terrence Mortimer Gales the Seventh, and I am the Municipality Building Safety and Construction Inspector for the City of Anchorage. And I have been informed that there have been some unlicensed repairs and upgrades to this home. I am here to inquire as to the aspects of the veracity of this claim and to inspect, if necessary, said unwarranted upgrades and possibly impose appropriate fines. Are you willing to assist me? Feely, roll the show.
Okay. Well, folks, here I am with Mike Dennis, noir writer and narrator with that particularly signature gravelly voice that can grab your attention and make you look behind your back when you're walking down an alley. Mike, all the way from Key West, Florida. We're kind of in climate extremes here. You being down in the tropics, me being in the Arctic subtropics, maybe.
Opposite corners of the country, Basil. Yeah,
That's it. That's it.
a few years ago, they had an exchange that the newspapers from Key West and Fairbanks exchanged reporters for a week.
Oh, wow.
And the Fairbanks reporter came down here, and we sent a reporter up there. It was quite interesting.
I wonder how the differences in the stories worked. I'm originally from Fairbanks, small
Really?
town, 40,000 people out in the middle of nowhere.
Well, I remember the Key West reporter was the strangest thing that she faced was the idea of having to eat moose.
Mm.
And she
Yep.
wasn't quite, they set a slab in front of her, and she just wasn't quite sure what to do with it.
Yeah, that is our diet down there. But then again, you guys have all those weird colored fish and things like that down there. So, wow, that is pretty neat. So you started, how did you get started in audiobook narrating?
Well, I guess it's been about 2 years now. I got a phone call from a girl that I used to know when I lived in Las Vegas. I was in Las Vegas for a few years back in the late 2000s for about 4 years. And during that time, I was in a writers group, where we'd get up and read a portion of our work in progress every week and be critiqued on it. And this girl was in the writers group also. Well, now it turns out that over time she left the writers group and went on to start a small audiobook publishing company. And she called me, and she remembered how I had used to read my pieces of my work in progress, and she loved the way I read, and she wanted to know if I'd be interested in doing some audiobooks. So I said sure. So it was really a kind of a backdoor entry into the world. I'd always wanted to do something with my voice because I always felt that I could do something. All my life, I used to be a musician for 30 years, and during that period of time, I met a lot of radio people, and they all said, "Man, you should be in radio. You got a great voice for radio." But I never wanted to do radio.
Right.
So I wouldn't have minded doing the other things, audiobooks or VO work and that kind of thing. But I never knew how to break in. So I just put it aside, and until a couple of years ago when the opportunity presented itself, and that's how I got started.
Well, that's pretty neat. So had you already written some novels of your own? Had you already been published before you got into narration?
As a writer, yes, I had done about six novels and a couple of novelettes and a few short stories, and I had been doing that for several years prior to when I got into narration. Then, since I got into narration, I started getting a lot of work, and I started, as you know, I'm sure, because you're a narrator yourself, you know that it's a very steep learning curve.
Oh yeah.
And so I made the climb. I'm still making the climb, but I didn't know how steep it was when I first got into it, as I'm sure most people don't. But at any rate, when I realized how much I had to learn and how much work I was going to have to put into it, I sort of put the writing on the back burner for a while until I got the narration going. Now I've achieved some success with the narration, and I'm going to keep at it for a while and see where it takes me.
Well, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Now, from what I saw on Audible, you have a pretty even mix of noir slash crime work out there and erotica slash work.
Right.
Now,
The erotica. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I was just going to say, how do you make that combination? You know, that's something people will picture. You know, the Sam Spade, the fedora, and the gun, and all that stuff. And then I guess you could kind of picture the chicks in lace and all that stuff too. How did you fall into those two categories?
Well, the erotica was what I started doing 2 years ago when that girl
Mm,
from the publishing company asked me to do. She was publishing mostly erotica,
mm,
and so I'm it's not my cup of tea personally, but it was a chance to break in. And I mean frankly the sound quality was not too good. I'm surprised that they actually accepted it, but they did, and it gave me a chance to improve myself and get better and learn how to do it. So
right.
in other words, it was sort of like in the old days of entertainment, it was sort of like the vaudeville of narration, where you had a chance to really uh, get your act together, and where you didn't have to really be all that great, but you could be passable, somewhat passable, and get your act together as you moved up the ladder,
Mm,
to prepare to move up the ladder. And so I did the erotica, and then noir and crime are my favorite genres,
mm.
and so I really pursued those titles as I began to improve my sound, and was able to compete more in the arena.
Now that the noir and crime, that's what you write as well.
Yes, right.
So was that your first narration work for in that genre? Was your own work, or did you do other folks first?
My first narration work in that genre, it was not my own. It was I did do one of my own, but or two of my own, I think. Now that I think about it, but my first work in that genre was not my own. It was someone else's,
Mm,
and I actually don't like doing my own work, my own books. I mean, I did my own books just because I wanted to get them out there. But now that I listen to them, if I had to do them over again, or if I decide to do any subsequent books, I'm going to have somebody else do them.
that's
I,
interesting.
I, don't, I don't feel right doing them.
Huh, why is that? Is it just the voices don't?
Yeah, I just I feel like I'm trying to take a shortcut here. I mean, it just doesn't feel right. And I'd rather devote my narration time to something that really has a better chance of doing well.
Mm,
Like some of the things I've done. So that's really the reason.
interesting. Now, recently you had a big jump in your narration career.
Right.
Tell us about this, the project that's coming up here.
Well, back last summer, one day I was trolling Amazon, and I discovered that I came across the novel I, the Jury by Mickey Spillane, which was his very first novel. It is also his biggest selling novel, and it was the novel that introduced Mike Hammer to the world.
Mm,
And I happened to notice that there was no audiobook attached to this. Now, I immediately started looking up all the other Spillane novels, and they all had audiobooks attached to them, most of them, all the other Mike Hammer ones anyway. And they were all narrated by Stacy Keach, whom I'm sure you know
oh, yeah.
is Mike Hammer. I mean, he
Right,
played on
right.
TV for years, and I mean, he's just got this greatest voice. And I listened to one or two of his narrations. I got the audiobooks, and he knocks it out of the park. He really does. But in any case, I, the Jury, did not have an audiobook attached to it, and I thought I would love to do that audiobook. And I looked at I tried to find out who the publisher was, and I looked on Amazon, and it said Signet. Well, I mean, the Signet is, I think, long gone. And it showed like a 1940s cover. And in other words, there is no, I think, there is no modern cover attached to this book anymore.
Mm,
I looked around. I tried to find the publisher. I was unable to. I finally wrote to a friend of mine, Max Allan Collins, who is a writer. He's had some 75 or 80 novels out. I don't know, more than that even. And a lot of successful series. And he was a friend of Spillane's when he was alive, when Spillane was alive. And Spillane entrusted the Mike Hammer franchise to Max when he had a lot of unfinished novels around his home, notes and partial manuscripts and whatnot. And when Spillane died, his wife called Max and said, "Come get it." And Max came and got it and vowed to complete every one of these Mike Hammer novels. And
oh,
he
wow.
has done so. He's done so, and he's got these. They're now collaborations. They're titled such and such by Mickey Spillane and Max Allan Collins. And so Max is very, very well attuned to everything Spillane. He knows everything there is to know about Spillane and Mike Hammer. So and I knew Max. So I wrote to him. I said, Max, who's got the publishing rights to I, the Jury, because I want to do the audiobook. And he wrote back and he said, oh, forget it. He said, Random House has them. Excuse me, Simon and Schuster, not Random House. Simon and Schuster has them, but they've been slowly ticking off all of the Mike Hammers using Stacy Keach. So you can forget it because they're going to use him, and that's all there is to it. And normally that would discourage most people, and it almost discouraged me. But I thought, well, they don't have him yet. It's not out yet. So let's just see. So I recorded a brief sample from the novel, and I've called around and trying to get a hold of somebody at Simon and Schuster. Have you ever tried to call these publishers?
Oh man,
their phone number it's like trying to call the Oval Office. You just cannot get, you can't even get their regular phone number. And when you do, you can't get hold of any. They're all suspicious whenever you call. They don't want to they don't want to talk to anybody. But I finally, after weeks of trying, finally got. And digging around in their website, by the way, I finally got the name of the head of the audiobook division at Simon and Schuster. And I finally, after weeks of trying, I got him on the phone. I got him on the phone. So I explained, I'm fortunate. I just didn't go, like this. But I explained to him who I was and what I wanted to do. And he said, well, we don't really do business this way. And I said, I know. But I had just done a novel by Lawrence Block. So I said, I did this novel by Lawrence Block, and it's the same kind of material as Spillane. It's kind of noir, heavy on the atmosphere. And so just give me a chance. Let me send you. I've got this recorded sample all prepared. Let me send it to you, and you'll see what the finished novel will sound like. And I said I did it in my home studio, and I can hear the guy groaning on the other end, and he's about to accept something from some guy down at the end of the road who recorded something in some jackleg home studio, right? So I sent it to him, and of course I don't hear anything back. These people say, and then Thanksgiving rolls around, and now see, this has gone from summer to Thanksgiving, and this is only as far as I've gotten, right? So Thanksgiving rolls around, and he says, no, it's holidays coming up, and I don't know what's going on, and he's all right. Then anyway, finally, somewhere around the middle of December, he writes and says, Mike, I just wanted to tell you, I sent your sample off to the head of our production department, and they're going to listen to it. Okay. I thought, well, this is certainly good news.
Big step.
Right?
Yeah, big step.
Right. He could have said, he could have just told me to go fly a kite, but instead he said he sent it to the production department. So then, the holidays come and go, and I think Simon and Schuster was actually closed. The whole operation closed down for the week between Christmas and New Year's. It's just unbelievable how these people ever get anything done. And but anyway, they after January, sometime in the middle of January, I got an email from the head of the production department, and she said, Mike, we really like your little sample, but I want to hear the whole first chapter, just to show that you can maintain this tone and pacing, for a decent length of time. And Spillane writes, about 20-minute chapters, 25-minute chapters. Right. So I said, sure. So I did the first chapter. I sent it off to her, and she said, okay, I got your first chapter, and I'm going to send it off. I'm going to send it to our sound engineer. Right. And I figure, oh, geez, sound engineer. This is
where they're going to crucify you.
Here's where I get torn apart. Right. Yeah. Here's where the door slams in my face. Right. So the sound engineer, again, a couple weeks go by. Sound engineer writes me back and says, Mike, I really like your thing, but your sample, but could you lift the noise floor a little and do a little tweak here and there? He talked a couple little tweaks, and so I tweaked it just a little bit, and I sent it back to him. He said, yeah, this is great. So now I hear back from the production department head, the head of the production department. A couple weeks later, says, we like it. We want you to do the whole book. I fainted dead away at that point. I'm going to do Jury, the first Mike Hammer novel. I'm going to do it. All right. So they want me to do the whole book. So I did the whole book. I signed a contract. I sent him the invoice. I sent it off. I just uploaded the whole book to him. I actually had the book done about maybe 6 weeks ago, but I just uploaded it to him maybe last week because I wanted to see, I was waiting for the contract to clear, and that's another glacially paced procedure.
Oh, yeah.
Contract, and so I had to wait for that to clear. All right, so now I got that, so I just uploaded it to him, and I don't have a release date yet, but according to the way things have gone so far, the pace at which things have gone so far, I'm expecting it around sometime around the year 2035.
Well, we're going to
I
time
don't.
this podcast to coincide with it, so
Right.
hopefully we'll all still be alive.
Yeah, right. I will let you know the release date the minute I learn it. But that's how I got it. And I have to say, I'm very grateful to Simon and Schuster for giving me this opportunity, because they could have told me to just get lost and buzz off.
Oh,
But
yeah. Oh, yeah. I
they
mean, they
couldn't do
have a big stable of narrators out there.
it. Stable now. They got their studios, they got everything, and they don't need me. But and I mean, and I'm surprised that when I alerted them to the fact that this book did not have an audiobook attached to it, that the head of the audiobook division didn't look through his Rolodex and immediately pick up Stacy Keach's number and call him up. I mean, I'm really surprised they didn't do that.
Right.
But
Right.
but they didn't, and so I'm thrilled. I'm positively thrilled to have been chosen for this. It's really the high point of my career so far.
Well, that is an awesome, awesome story, and it's highly encouraging. I went through something the exact opposite of what what you just enjoyed, to where I called up in a book that I'd loved since I was a teenager, and I said, "Boy, I want to narrate this." This specific book it was the reason I joined the Marine Corps. Was when I read this book, it motivated me to make this huge change in my life, and I did it. And I called the author, I called his agent, I called the publisher. And then they said, "Wow, that's really," and they responded in email and said, "Wow, yeah, that's a great idea. Let me see what we could do." 6 months later, I saw it on Audible, narrated by a big Hollywood actor.
Oh yeah, well yeah.
Oh, well, cool. Thanks.
Guess
Glad
who
you
they're
got the
going
book.
to get if it's down between you and him.
Yeah,
You know who they're going to pick.
exactly, exactly. So, but when to see that you got it and you made it by being persistent like that.
And all I can say is that, and you would never have convinced me of this before this whole thing happened,
Hmm.
because I believe the opposite. But right now, I can tell you, I'm a firm believer. Cold querying works, and that's how I got this. Cold
Now,
querying.
did you send in a demo? Did you do that professionally made demo, or you did it in your studio?
I did it in my home studio, so they could see what their finished book was going to sound like.
Right.
Because I didn't want to go out and get it professionally done and then record the book in my home studio.
Hmm.
I did the thing in my home studio and sent it out, and so they could hear what it would sound like. And I have to say that I was persistent, and that I have to give that's probably the one thing I did best was be persistent in this whole thing.
Now, would you label
But
it as positively persistent or irritably persistent?
uh, I was positively irritable. And
There you go.
I'm sure I annoyed some people along the way, but nevertheless, I mean, I always kept the tone of my emails very professional,
That's
very upbeat,
that's
and
great.
and no snarkiness, nothing like that. And I always let them know that I knew that it was very unusual for them to even consider something like this, but that here's why they should consider it. And I went on to explain what other things I've done in the genre, but I think the sample was what really sold it, and it was calling the head of the audiobook division and getting him to accept that sample, which really triggered the whole sequence of events that got me the book.
Now, you put that sample up on Facebook. I believe it was the same sample. I'm assuming.
It probably was, yeah.
You put something from that on Facebook,
Yeah.
and when I listened to it, if I was a casting director, I would have said, "Dang, that's the one right there. That's the voice." Because I remember listening to that and saying, "He's got that down. That was awesome sounding." Matter of fact,
Thank you, man.
I'm going to play that sample.
Oh,
I shook the rain from my hat and walked into the room. Nobody said a word. They stepped back politely, and I could feel their eyes on me. Pat Chambers was standing by the door to the bedroom, trying to steady Myrna. The girl's body was racking with dry sobs. I walked over and put my arms around her. "Take it easy, kid," I told her. "Come on over here and lie down." I led her to a studio couch that was against the far wall and sat her down. She was in pretty bad shape. One of the uniformed cops put a pillow down for her, and she stretched out. Pat motioned me over to him and pointed to the bedroom. "In there, Mike," he said. In there. The words hit me hard. In there was my best friend lying on the floor, dead. The body. Now I could call it that. Yesterday it was Jack Williams, the guy that shared the same mud bed with me through 2 years of warfare in the stinking slime of the jungle. Jack, the guy who said he'd give his right arm for a friend, and did, when he stopped a bastard of a Jap from slitting me in two. He caught the bayonet in the biceps, and they amputated his arm. Pat didn't say a word. He let me uncover the body and feel the cold face. For the first time in my life, I felt like crying. Where did he get it, Pat? In the stomach. Better not look at it. The killer carved the nose off a .45 and gave it to him low. I threw back the sheet anyway, and a curse caught in my throat. Jack was in shorts, his one hand still clutching his belly in agony. The bullet went in clean, but where it came out left a hole big enough to cram a fist into. Very gently, I pulled the sheet back and stood up. It wasn't a complicated setup. A trail of blood led from the table beside the bed to where Jack's artificial arm lay. Under him, the throw rug was ruffled and twisted. He had tried to drag himself along with his one arm, but never reached what he was after. His police positive, still in the holster, was looped over the back of the chair. That was what he wanted. With a slug in his gut, he never gave up. I pointed to the rocker, overbalanced under the weight of the .38. Did you move the chair, Pat? No, why? It doesn't belong there, don't you see? Pat looked puzzled. Well, what are you getting at? That chair was over there by the bed. I've been here often enough to remember that much. After the killer shot Jack, he pulled himself toward the chair. But the killer didn't leave after the shooting. He stood here and watched him grovel on the floor in agony. Jack was after that gun, but he never reached it. He could have if the killer didn't move it. The trigger-happy bastard must have stood by the door laughing while Jack tried to make his last play. He kept pulling the chair back, inch by inch, until Jack gave up. Tormenting a guy who's been through all sorts of hell. Laughing. This was no ordinary murder, Pat. It's as cold-blooded and as deliberate as I ever saw one. I'm going to get the one that did this. You dealing yourself in, Mike? I'm in. What did you expect? You're going to have to go easy. Fast, Pat. From now on, it's a race. I want the killer for myself. We'll work together as usual, but in the home stretch, I'm going to pull the trigger. No, Mike, it can't be that way. You know it. Okay, Pat, I told him. You have a job to do, but so have I. Jack was about the best friend I ever had. We lived together and fought together, and by Christ, I'm not letting the killer go through the tedious process of the law. You know what happens, damn it. They get the best lawyer there is and screw up the whole thing and wind up a hero. The dead can't speak for themselves. They can't tell what happened. How could Jack tell a jury what it was like to have his insides ripped out by a dum-dum? Nobody in the box would know how it felt to be dying or have your own killer laugh in your face. One arm. Hell, what does that mean? So he has the Purple Heart. But did they ever try dragging themselves across a floor to a gun with that one arm, their insides filling up with blood, so goddamn mad to be shot they'd do anything to reach the killer? No, damn it. A jury is cold and impartial like they're supposed to be, while some snotty lawyer makes them pour tears as he tells how his client was insane at the moment or had to shoot in self-defense. Swell. The law's fine, but this time I'm the law, and I'm not going to be cold and impartial. I'm going to remember all those things.
And so there you go. I mean, that right there was a professionally made sample made by you. And the key, I think, that a listener, someone to this podcast can walk away with is, you know, if you do it, if you work from a professional level, even in your home studio, even as a relatively fresh narrator, you can make big leaps and bounds in your career.
Absolutely. And you know, my equipment, I see on the professional audiobook narrators Facebook page and all those Facebook pages, all these people that have all this exotic equipment, you know, plugins and the declickers and all this kind of stuff. I don't have any of that. I have a nice microphone. I spent a lot of money on a microphone, about $700, and I have a preamp, and then I have two JBL studio speakers, 5-inch speakers, and a Mac computer and Twisted Wave software. And that's about it.
Yeah.
And a pop shield. And I have nice headphones, but I mean, I don't have a lot of exotic equipment, but it's what you do with it, and what I've learned to do with it anyway, that has really helped me out.
Right, right. I think that's a key that a lot of people, newbies especially, really need to realize is that no one's going to be able, on the other end, they're not going to be able to really tell what equipment you had unless you have really crappy equipment.
Right.
They're not going to be able to hear that in the end product.
The microphone is the key piece.
Yeah.
You have to have a good microphone, and if you have the good microphone, and make sure that and I also have an enclosure here. It's what's called a vocal booths to go thing. It's basically a tubular aluminum frame that over which I draped acoustic blankets that is velcroed together. So it's a custom made thing, and it's very nice, and it gives me a very dead sound. Now I've got a fan going in here right now, so I don't know if that's screwing up your sound.
No,
But,
no. You can
because
barely hear it in the background, but
it's really hot here.
Yeah.
So I have to
Well, I
have this-
imagine you're in Florida.
Yeah, I mean it's 83 degrees out, and it's 9:30 at night, almost 10 o'clock at night. But
Wow.
yeah, so it's pretty warm. But anyway, I've got this. I have a very dead sound in here, and I see to it that there's not a lot of reflection or anything like that. So that really contributes, I think, to the sound quality that I get.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's all those different things coming together and the professional mindset. Now you
Right.
you were a musician. What kind of music did you play?
My instrument was piano, and I played rock and roll, rhythm and blues, and country for about 30 years. During which time I never held another job. I lived all over. I was 5 years in Nashville. I was 8 years in Houston. I was 6.5 years in New Orleans. I was in Memphis. I was here and there. I lived all over. I toured. I played big shows for tens of thousands of people, and I played smoky bars for no one at all. Literally no one. One night I remember in Austin, Texas, right outside Austin, Texas, I was playing in this bar, and there was not only no customers in there, but the bartender and waitress went outside to smoke a joint. So there was literally no one in the bar but me.
Playing to a totally empty room. Wow. Well,
Totally.
hey,
Yeah.
that brings me to the next question: is did you find that the discipline that you had to endure as a musician has that contributed to your narrator skills or to?
Absolutely. The work ethic that I developed as a musician, which was considerable, I have to admit, I immediately transferred over to narrating, and once I get started, I focus in like a laser, and I get the job done, and no matter how long it takes, no matter what I have to do, I get it done, and that's really the attitude that I've gone after every endeavor, professional endeavor that I've ever tried in my life.
Excellent. So do you oh shoot, I just had a question on the tip of my tongue and it fell out my frontal lobe. Well, it was related to music, and I'll get back to it here in a second. And oh, it's gone. Okay. Well,
I do want to say this though, on the heels of the Spillane I the Jury success, I'm now going after a much bigger book, and I don't want to say what it is right now because I don't want to jinx myself.
Right.
But it's a much bigger book by an A-list author. And if I were to tell you what it is, you wouldn't believe that there was no audiobook attached to it.
Oh,
There is no audiobook. And when I learned this, I was aghast. I really couldn't believe it. Now this has taken me many months to get to this point, and I'm to the point right now where the company that holds the audio rights, and it has taken me a long time to track them down because the audio rights to this book were very muddy to begin with, and but I finally tracked them down and have zeroed in and identified the holder of the audio rights, and they now have my sample that I recorded from that particular novel, plus the sample that I sent from I the Jury, just to show that I've done, some other things. and it's really in their hands, and there's nothing more I can do. So I'm either going to get it or I'm not going to get it. So I mean, I've done all I can,
Hmm.
and it's now in the hands of the gods, so to speak.
And now both of these, I'm assuming, especially with Simon and Schuster or any big publishers, these are per finished hour jobs.
Oh yes, yes, absolutely.
I mean, it wouldn't be bad to get a royalty share off of a major
Yeah,
novel like that, but the big
yeah, but
companies know better.
they're not going to. Yeah, they won't go for it. But however, I will say this that once the jury comes out, I'm going to do everything I can, and I'm going to call my buddy, the head of the audiobook division at Simon and Schuster, call him and tell him that I'm willing to do anything I can to help sell these audiobooks. I will do I'll do podcasts, I will do interviews, I'll go to New York and do readings if I have to. I'll do anything at all. In other words, I told him I'm not going to just take the money and disappear into the mist. I want to do everything I can to sell these books, because now they know that I'm really on board with this, and hopefully this might spur them on to give me further work.
Right, right. Speaking of
But
being on board, what do you do as far as training, education, and continuing education as a narrator?
well, I recently went to VO Atlanta, which
Mm.
was a great voiceover conference in Atlanta. I went to that in last year also, 2014 and 15. It's a great conference. I went to APAC last year. Uh, I am doing the DN audio thing tomorrow night.
Mm.
There's a DN audio,
The
webinar kind of a
webinar,
thing,
yeah, I'm going to be on that as well.
and I'm going to do that. And then there's I've done. I mean, everywhere, every chance I get to learn something, I go for it. I listen to audiobooks. Like I said, I listened to a couple of Stacy Keach's readings of Mike Hammer, and I made the big mistake of listening to one while I was recording Idle Jury.
Mm.
And I can't go on. I can't go on. I have to quit right now. But I got over that and got through it. But so I mean, and you listen to audiobooks, you can really learn a lot from listening.
Mm.
You hear what these other people do, and you hear exactly how they do it, and you can pick up a lot of things from them.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, that's a key thing. Do you take classes or anything as well?
I do. I take classes from Sean Pratt, who's a great voice coach,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
I get together with him. We have sessions every couple of weeks or so, and I've learned an immeasurable amount from him.
Hmm. Well, that's excellent. That's excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to listening to this Eye of the Jury, and I just you've got an astonishing presence, and as well, both in the sound of your voice, but also in the acting skill that
Oh,
you've
thank
got as far as the reading, and that is just one of the most important things to get out there to other people. Like you said earlier, a lot of people said, "Boy, you should get into radio. You got the voice for radio," but having the voice for radio isn't the same as having the voice for audiobooks.
No, no, I never wanted to do radio. It never appealed to me. And when I was playing music, I noticed all along the way that those radio guys all wanted to do what I did.
Mm.
So I said, why would I do that? When I'm already doing what they want to do.
Right.
But I have no acting background, which I think was a strike against me. But I learned again from listening and from reading. I've always been a reader, and I always feel that when I read something aloud, I can tell the story. It's not just reading the words. I'm telling the story. So I've always felt I could do that. So starting from that position, it was not a big jump to audiobook narration.
Mm.
Now it was a big jump to getting good at it, and I'm still making that jump. But I always felt I could tell a story very well.
Excellent. Now, do you foresee this as a long time career for you?
Well, I certainly hope so. If I get this next big book that I'm going after, I can promise you that I will be in this for keeps. I mean, as I feel right now, I'm in it for keeps. But this next big book will really bind me to it, and there will be almost nothing that could tear me away from it.
Oh, that's excellent. So obviously you enjoy what you're doing.
Oh yeah, I really love it. Yeah, as I'm sure you do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. My favorite part of it is I get to be all these different people all the time.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Live my life through them vicariously through the words of the books until the characters end up being a little creepy or greasy or something, and then I'm kind of like, oh, ew.
Then you have to call on your dark side.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Let me ask you something.
Uh-huh.
When you're narrating, and you have a book, let's say a novel with many different characters in it, how do you voice each character? How do you pick the voice for each character?
Well, I typically have a standard set of voices for the main protagonist.
Right.
The main male hero is going to sound this certain way in general, not exactly like the same guy or similar guy in all the other books, but here's this range for my main character, and then everybody else, it just kind of it depends on how well the author's written the characters, and then just slight fluctuations. I just finished a novel that had a goth teenage girl and this nerdy Manhattan accountant and his semi-hot Midwestern wife and a DEA agent and a 6-year-old and all these different characters in it, some of which, like the goth girl and the Manhattan accountant, were actually, in my mind, sounded almost similar. He's the skinny little nerd guy and she's the boyish girl. And so
Right.
they got to be similar, but you got to just put a little slight variation, a slight tilt to each one, and
You
off
can't
you go.
sound like you don't want the listener to be confused.
Exactly. You got to put enough of a difference in it. And then I've heard other people. You mentioned Lawrence Block.
Yeah.
I listened to a book that he had narrated of his own,
Yeah, he used to do those.
and he gave like no variation at all between the voices,
Right. He
but
just,
still came across convincing.
yeah.
With the way that he read it, and some authors can do that. Some narrators, I should say, can do that.
Yeah.
So,
I find sometimes, I listened to an audiobook not too long ago where the narrator didn't really try to make any variation in the characters' voices. He just read them all in his own voice, and it was very difficult to follow because, especially when you had a scene with no dialogue tags, I mean, you're trying to figure out who's talking, and
right.
it's I think it's really imperative that you give each character a different voice. At least I try to, and it's easier for me really to do that. It's easier because that way I know who's talking. I can slip into the character much more easily, and than if he or she didn't have their own voice.
Right. Well, that's like the title of this podcast is Voices in My Head. And, that's all those voices, they come out. And if you've got the throat and if you've got the genetics to be somewhat of a mimic, you can make it easy and make it very variable to the point where it's clear and easy to see all of them. And if they have accents, it's even easier.
And a lot of times I'll hear somebody on the radio or on TV or something, or it's speaking. I like to listen to Sirius XM Radio's Old Time Radio Classics channel, and on there you'll hear some of these old radio actors speaking in these voices that you hardly ever hear anymore. And I hear that, and I whip out my cell phone and try to imitate that voice and speak into it, and record it into my cell phone, because those are like very unusual type voices, but they could be really useful for a character somewhere down the road.
Oh yeah, especially in the genres that you like to do, like noir, where you got that 40s and 50s sound to it. I listened to a book, The Day of the Jackal, the original tape recording of it from 1973. And it was read by a guy who I pictured as he was probably like a Bank of London accountant who did this on the side because he dreamed about being an English professor as a more exciting job than being a bank accountant. And he sat there and read the whole book as if he was reading it to his child, but he had no acting credentials whatsoever and did not know how to differentiate between the voices. For 700 pages, it went on like this.
Oh
It's
my
like,
God.
oh, dear God. Eventually, my mind got into sync with what he was doing. And I was surprised I was able to listen through because it was the only recording I could find of the original book.
I don't think I could get into sync with something like that. It would drive me crazy.
It was, and this is when I was first learning to be a narrator myself.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, man, I hope there's something better than this. I need to contact these people and redo this book for them.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Now you could do what I did, divide the jury.
There you go. And that's something I think it was Sean Pratt that was telling me in our interview about, back when he started, there were very limited numbers of books because it took so long to do each book.
Yeah, and it was so expensive.
It was expensive. They had to be very picky about what they did, and you'd have 4 or 5 people doing each book.
And not only that, when they were on cassette, you couldn't put the whole book on. There'd be too many cassettes.
Right.
You'd have 10 or 15 tapes, so they had to abridge everything. And I mean, like for example, I did a book, a David Goodis novel called The Secret Squad, which was originally called Night Squad. It came out in the late 50s, I think, early 60s. And it was done as an audiobook on tape back in like 1981 or something, or 85 or somewhere around there, by Kevin Spacey, right? One of the first things he ever did before he got famous. And he was very good with it, but the book was like cut in half. I mean,
Right.
they left out all kinds of parts. When I first got the job to do the book, I got to Kevin Spacey. I looked up on Amazon. There was a third-party vendor that had a cassette version of it for sale for like $5 or something. So I went ahead and bought it and I listened to it. And Spacey was great, but they left out half the book. You could hardly follow the plot because it was all, they just chopped it all up.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they had to do that.
It's like
But
the
now,
Cliff Notes audiobooks.
yeah, right. But now with downloads, you get the full unabridged versions.
Yeah, and that's the awesome thing. I love unabridged audiobooks. Just keep them going. It's like living in that universe.
Yeah.
Well, the Leprechauns have a couple of questions they said that they want to ask you. So I'm gonna let them come up into the box right now and present these to you.
Okay.
And okay, boys, you ready?
Yes, sir, we're ready for the questions here. This is Boffin. I'm the third brother. Not that I'm a third, although sometimes my brother Feely says I am. But I'm not a third. I am the third. I'm the third. The third brother.
A grand turd you would be, boy.
Well, thank you very much. And I have a question for you because I've never been to Florida. And we've only lived in Ireland, parts of Canada and Alaska. And we don't have those things that you guys got down there. The big dinosaur things that you have living out there in your yards. These, what's they called? Alligators.
Alligators. Well, there's not one in my yard, I can tell you. They only live in like fresh water and canals and that kind of thing, and swamps. And Key West is not a swamp. You have to go up to the mainland, really. Although somewhere there are, I think you can see, and there have been alligators or crocodiles in some of the lower keys. They have canals, but you really got to get up to the mainland, and that's where you'll see them.
Well, I've always wondered, because I thought it would be very hard to sleep in your house and not know if you're going to step off into your slippers or into the mouth of an animal that'll bite your leg off. So it sounds like you don't have that to worry about down there.
No, we don't have that to worry about here in Key West, fortunately.
Do you ever feel like you've got too much sunshine?
Oh, you can never have too much sunshine.
Well, I don't know. My brother Berthold's really pale, and in the sunshine he turns into something like a lobster without claws, so loses all the benefits of being that red.
Yeah, I'm Irish myself, and that I'm very pale, and I try to stay out of the sun. I don't like to get sun at all because I've had little bouts with skin cancer here and there, little skin cancers removed, and so I know better than to spend any time in the sun.
Well, one thing I figured is that whiskey helps a lot. Yes, because if you drink several glasses of it before you go outside, you fall asleep before you get to the door, and then you're never in the sun.
I have some of the Grand Bushmill 16-year-old malt.
Ooh, Bushmills. That's a good one.
It's a good one, 16-year-old single malt. And I have a shot of that maybe once every week or so, and it settles me right down.
Oh, that'll be good. Then you don't have to worry about the sunburn at all. So what made you move to Key West, I'd wonder?
Well, when I was living in New Orleans before I came here, and I was playing music in New Orleans and on Bourbon Street. I played there for 6 or 7 years in the same place, and I really liked New Orleans. But I always told myself that if I ever had to leave, the only place in the country where I'd ever go would be Key West, because I'd been everywhere else in the country, with the exception of Alaska, actually, and there were some good places, but Key West was to me the best place to go. It's the place that spoke to me the loudest. So when I left New Orleans in 1991, I came down here, and I stayed here until '06 when I went to Las Vegas, and then came back in 2010.
Well, it sounds like you really love the place, and it's a great thing to love the place. We love it here in Alaska because of two things. One, the weather's quite nice for our temperament, and two, the police aren't after us here. So,
Well, I mean, of course the police aren't after you because who's going to go around raping and robbing and when it's 40 below outside?
exactly. So, all right, boys, that's enough boffing. Thank you very much. Go back down, and don't forget, you got to make dinner tonight. You're cooking. Oh, thank you very much. I hope you don't mind cabbage. So. So those are my roommates. They live in the crawl space under the house. Or well, that's the one of them. The other three, I don't know what mischief they're up to today.
They make Keebler cookies, do they?
Oh yes, oh yes. They make the cookies, they make the donuts, and they make some astonishingly good lager,
Great,
like
great.
this one right here.
All right.
So, well, thank you very much, Mike. It's been great. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how I the Jury does. That is just an awesome story about you getting out there and getting that. And best of luck to you with this other title that you're fighting for.
And I'll let you know if that ever comes through. And but in the meantime, I'm focusing on I the Jury. But anyway, I do want to thank you for the opportunity to appear on your podcast. It was very generous of you.
Well, I'm glad you're here. And we got your website address down on the bottom of the screen. People can go out there and check out Mike's books, both the books that he's written and all the books that he's recorded, and enjoy the listens. He's got an awesome voice, an awesome presence, and he's just a cool guy. And now he's going to go back down there. He's in Key West, so he's heading out to, Margaritaville, and going to play his guitar on the beach, or in his case, his piano on the beach. How do you carry that piano out there with you?
I have roadies.
All righty. Well, you have a wonderful evening, sir.
All right, Basil. Thank you again. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
So are you going to assist me, or shall I get his search warrant? Hold on just a moment. Gerald, this calls for you.
May I help you, little man?
What are you?
My name is Gerald. I am Mr. Basil's butler. May I be of assistance?
Have you done any upgrades to the house recently?
Upgrades? No, sir. The only thing we've done is provide a little more headroom for myself in a couple of the doorways. Nothing requiring a permit as far as I know.
Okay. I'll take your word for that.
Thank you very much. Would you like to stay for dinner?
Yeah, I'm fine. Already got plans. Thank you very much. Good Lord, he's a big man.
Strange little man, he. Don't know what he wanted. This show is copyright 2015 by Sam M Production Studios of Alaska and Basil Sands and all that stuff. Boy, talking to guys like that makes me hungry. Anyone got a spare caribou?